This right here is going to backfire.
And the Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking. Look, if he is elected, Donald Trump intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations. And he intends to end the Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
Well, based upon some of the initial reactions, it looks like what I was thinking was 100% correct. Just let Kamala be Kamala, and she will do Kamala things. Now, guys, before we talk about what happened in Detroit the other night and this whole I'm speaking, shutting down a protester, and of course you guys are seeing some stuff here in the B-roll footage, and there's also another angle of this that you guys need to see that the media is not going to report. I also want to tell you right now, this video right here is going to be about why it is that I don't, I don't stress out over the polls. I don't stress out over the polling information. However, there is a caveat to the polling information that you guys, I think, need to hear, because there's actually a sinister component to it. And no, it's not suppression polls to black pill the masses or black pill base the people from voting. It's actually something darker that I'll tell you guys at the very end of the video that I want you guys to hear. Just say that Richard Barris is at it again. And of course, he made a very, very good point the other day. I want to say it was his Monday episode. Of course, you guys know me. I do listen to that show from time to time. But the point is this right here. When you start screwing around the polls, God knows what could happen as a result of that. Now, with that right there being said, let's go ahead and dive into this. So the other night in Detroit, Kamala Harris, she got heckled by, as what you guys saw, she got heckled by one of the Free Palestine folks. Now, before we dive fully into that, I want to show you guys another angle of the heckling itself, so that way you guys can see, because they split it up a certain way to show you guys what was actually going on in the crowd versus what was actually going on stage. Also, one more thing too. Throughout each time that I post this, because we're going to play it at least 3 times total, this will being the second time, I want you guys to pay very, very close attention to this woman's face when actually pushed, because I think it says everything you need to know about her, a person. And somebody even responded to this. Of course, they were really responding to Don Lemon's dumbass, as you guys will see here in a second. But still, though, at the same time, though, pay very, very close attention to this woman's facial expression as she does it. But let's look at this.
Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
So why play that again? Well, as you guys know, there is a crowd of people that we call the Free Palestine crowd. These are people who are protesting for a free Palestine. There's also a separate crowd within that faction that are calling for a ceasefire. Now, really, really quick, I have no idea why they're calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza situation. Well, actually, I understand why, but still at the same time, though, instead of calling for a ceasefire, you should be calling for a peaceful resolution, meaning possibly a treaty, something like that, because a ceasefire doesn't really mean peace. It just means an end of the hostilities temporarily, and they normally pick back up shortly afterwards. Of course, the ceasefire we oftentimes love to look at is the armistice at the end of World War I, because, of course, there is a reason why it is that people say that World War II is just a continuation of World War I. That right there I may discuss at a later date when I start doing historical videos and stuff down the road, because I'm not leaving the platform. The fact of the matter is this right here. You've got a certain crowd of people that you have to appease, and it just turns out that the vast majority of these people happen to be in the Midwestern portion of the United States. There's a reason why it is that Jill Stein is getting traction with certain young voters. There's also the pro-Hamas crowd that just wants to eradicate Israel, and of course there's also the crowd that's just straight up anti-Semitic. Now, we'll briefly talk about them here shortly, especially when we talk about voter dynamics, but this is one of the reasons why it is that I don't get bummed out or upset by the polls. Republicans typically don't poll very well. Trump has been polling well this cycle a lot better than what he was in 2020, but still though, let's put it this way here. What polls really do is that they shape public opinion. However, if you get beyond the initial and you actually go down and look at the crosstabs, you'll see a different story. For example, there was a poll that came out the other day from NPR Mayor showing Harris up by 3, but yet when you actually went through the crosstabs, you saw that Trump was getting like 20% of black voters, and yet he was still winning white voters, and he was still doing very, very well with Hispanics. If you took the numbers and put them into NBC Swing the Election, and you actually adjust the turnout the way it would normally be adjusted, use 2016, 2020, whatever model you come up with, Trump is still winning the election via the Electoral College. If anything, only being up by 3 nationally for the Democrat is actually a bad sign, because it just goes to show more and more and more that, or it's more and more proof that your votes are coming in from California and extremely blue states with very high populations and not very, very many Republican voters. And of course, she is in the middle of a bounce. And of course, it's also been laid out here recently that her plan this cycle is to not take any serious questions or interviews until after Labor Day. This right here could be disastrous for her, but of course, I'm kind of counting all that, and not to mention given the fact that she's telling her own supporters to keep their mouths closed, stuff like that, a very, very easily triggered bunch of people. It seems to me that this person will screw things up on her own. Case in point, this little bit involving Don Lemon on TikTok and him basically getting checked by 2 separate Free Palestine people. One, of course, was a Kamala Harris supporter, and the other one is somebody who's open to it. Trust me, this is not the way to go to get these people. Roughly 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and watch.
And Kamala Harris just handled protesters in Michigan like a boss.
I think you can have even worse takes. Don Lemon always surprises me how much worse it can get. Because in that clip, I didn't see someone who was in boss mode. I saw someone who was in prosecutor mode. The kind of mode you go into just says like, I'll lock you up because I don't want to hear what you have to say. And that is not the moment that she needs to be having right now, but it seems to be the mode that she wants to go into. We just came off of a rally in Pennsylvania where they were talking about how we need to get away from divisiveness. Walls continue to talk about joy. And as someone whose entire work is rooted in taking a joy-based approach to transformational change, joy is rooted in community. It is community-centered. And part of community is making room to have difficult conversations. And so what I see is not someone being a boss shutting people down. It's someone who's scared that they do not have the ability to have a tough conversation. And a conversation that needs to be had way before we enter November and go to the polls. And that is a conversation that so many of us doing activist work around Palestine are trying to make sure is going to happen so we can clarify things. So instead of being on TikTok, an app that they want to ban, making all these videos to trending sounds, brats, coconuts, all the works, I need you to sit down and actually be based in community. Actually hear people out. Instead of saying, I'm talking, say, I hear you, I see you, we need to talk about this. Right now,
if you think this is some sort of cool, epic clapback moment, I don't even know what to say to you. This is just a disgusting and bad faith response to people protesting a genocide. Genocide which is being enabled not by Donald Trump, but by the government that Kamala Harris represents. The crowd was cheering for like a minute, by the way. It's just depressing. Donald Trump is horrible, but please don't allow yourself to be brainwashed by memes and PR. Kamala Harris is a war criminal and a pretty fucking condescending one.
Of course, this would also get brought right back up on the Timcast IRL, where they would have a bit of a reaction to the tweets that were coming out of Kamala Harris, basically doing or basically shutting down a protester. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you got to understand something right quick about this particular crowd of support that she's trying to get, or this particular crowd of support she's hurting with. She believes that she's got it in the bag. However, let me go ahead and tell you something right now. If you trigger this crowd or piss them off, they will stay home.
Let's play it.
Hold on. You know what? Here, hold on. Here's the thing. The courts are going to handle that. We're going to beat them in November.
Oh, she put her black accent on for that.
She's shook.
The courts
shook up
because she didn't like that they were yelling, "Lock him up." She's trying to tamp up. The courts are going to handle that. You run the courts.
Yep, she does.
Family friendly.
So she's already getting protested. I gotta say, like, I don't think she handled that well.
No, it's gonna blow back on her because you just dismissed the concerns of your pro-Gaza people, and that's gonna hurt her. We need to make sure we throw that in their faces so they remember Kamala does not care about your concerns with the Israel-Gaza war. Throw that in their faces over and over. We gotta just fight with anything we got.
Vote for genocide.
Good, don't vote.
This
for
is
her.
why they couldn't pick Josh Shapiro.
Right.
Imagine what the protesters would be doing if he was on stage.
No, that's a misnomer. They will protest her regardless if Josh Shapiro is the pick or not.
The protesters would have been bigger.
No, I don't.
This is great though. She just totally dismissed them. Look at her dismissing them.
And this is her trying to be like, I'm a girl boss.
I'm tough,
Such
but she's
trouble
doing
for
this
her.
to her own people.
And
This is going to split the
she
party.
looked
Very
nervous to me. I mean, she looked nervous.
She's terrified.
She's
It gets better. We have another clip. I haven't heard this yet. Let's play it.
Hold on. You know what?
Here's what I will say about what you guys just saw. I would argue that Jill Stein, Cornel West, and RFK voters, that I would say that they just got more votes. By the way, like I said before, these right here are votes that Kamala Harris will, in fact, need, especially in the Midwest. However, there is also the component of whether she gained voters or not, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video, so make sure you guys stick around with that. But let's go ahead and get back on subject. There's also this little bit that I saw come across the internet. There's actually two things that came across the internet, but I want you guys to see this first one because it shows you exactly how canned and inauthentic she is.
In Michigan. Listen, let me tell you, I am clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. And listen, I am clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. I took on perpetrators of all kinds. I took on perpetrators of all kinds and had a summer job at McDonald's. I had a summer job at McDonald's. So hear me when I say, Detroit, when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. I know Donald Trump's type. And are we ready to fight for it? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win.
Kamala's plagiarizing herself and Trump. I thought fight, fight, fight was his line.
You're basically watching the same exact speech every time she does an event. By the way, the event that she did in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, that crowd size, which, by the way, was a pretty solid crowd size, that was in the event of a Bonnevere concert. That was later on discovered to be what was going on. She happened to show up afterwards. Of course, it was still a rally. It was still an event. But still, though, this is kind of what Hillary Clinton used to do. She'd bring in Jay-Z, Beyonce, people like that. There where she would show up at their concerts and speak. So, therefore, it's pretty daggone, how do I say, it's pretty obvious that you're going to get a crowd if you've got people like that. However, it does not translate over to election wins. I'm a Trump guy, and I'm telling you right now, he gets massive crowds, but apparently does not always translate to election wins. I'm just pointing that out so that way these people can know that we are, in fact, on equal footing. Just simply saying. And there's this other bit that recently just hit the just hit Twitter, which I found this one to be kind of funny because she has been on record saying she wasn't going to do anything just for black people. And then you've got the reparations crowd that you've got to satisfy. Case in point, this little bit here from when she was a senator of California.
Excuse us, sir. Senator Harris, what about reparations? What about reparations, Senator Harris? Senator Harris, what about reparations? What about reparations?
What about
Senator Harris?
homeowner policy? Never wants to talk to black people.
I just figured I would toss that out there for the black voters so that way they could see that she's not exactly into the whole idea of, giving you reparations. Not to mention the fact that she clapped back at the very, very end while about to drive off. That really should tell you everything you need to know about this woman. Just saying. So, yeah, there's a lot here that could, in fact, backfire. It's a base issue. It's the biggest reason why it is she took Tim Walz was because he was all folksy and he wouldn't upstage her, but still him being very, very much a far-left radical could lend credence to what Jesse Waters was saying about it being a trick pick. I personally don't think it is a trick pick. As I've said before, this is the kind of administration that you would try to, how do I say, after an election, should you lose, try to steal the country or try to overtake it with, because these two are so radical. But still, though, the point is this right here. This right here is why you should not worry yourself with the polls, even though you just had a CNBC poll come out showing Trump up by 2, and you just had another poll that came out from Rasmussen showing Trump up by 5. Rasmussen has gotten a lot better, by the way, since Scott Rasmussen left. Now Mark Mitchell is in charge of it. They're very, very good. He has much, much better analysis this time around than before. And Rasmussen is a daily tracking poll. They do it by phone primarily. But still, though, the point is this right here. Basically telling your supporters or your support base to keep your mouths closed. I'm speaking, basically dismissing them outright. This right here is not the way to go if you want to win the national election. You got to be cognizant of your overall base. And guess what? It just happens to be that a third of that base is the more radical side. By the way, Kamala Harris, she has flip-flopped on each issue, and I've said that if the person is flip-flopping, it means that they are not going to do anything that either base wants them to be. And there's something else, too, that I want to say, and you guys are going to hear me say this again. If you are on the left, if you are a liberal, if you are of the Free Palestine crowd, I want you to know something right now. Even though Kamala Harris was viewed to be somewhat disrespectful when she met to Benjamin Netanyahu not too long ago, I want you to know something right now. She's going to continue, or she's going to allow the situation in the Middle East to continue. Why do I say that? Well, look at her husband. Doug Emhoff is, I got to say it once again.
The Jews!
That right there alone, even though he's definitely more on the secular side, the secular left side, should tell you right there exactly who she's going to side with, push come shove, on this issue. It will be lukewarm, but at the end of the day, though, just know right away, it's not going to guarantee you anything, and already twice, she's already helped undermine the possibility of a ceasefire or a potential treaty. What I'm saying is that the quote-unquote crap that's going on overseas, the quote-unquote crap that the Free Palestine crowd wants to end, would continue on her watch. Now, me, of course, being pro-Israel, I've already told you guys how I feel in several other videos, how this entire situation would go. I'm just simply telling you that she's not going to do anything for you when it comes to that. But speaking of that right there, now we got to talk strictly about the voters themselves and how it is that they may view this. Which brings us back to this topic of Josh Shapiro and anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. Now, I talked about Josh Shapiro and asked the question whether he got screwed or not in one of yesterday's videos. I'll have it linked in the end cards at the end. But, of course, leave it to our buddies at Timcast to kind of bring this topic up. Roughly 28 seconds. Let's listen to this.
Not going to pick Josh Shapiro.
It's much larger than 3-4%. I just think there's only 3-4% that would withhold their vote. I think the anti-Semitic, quote unquote, I don't care. And I'm not big on the Jew thing. I don't care either way, one way or another. But it's at least 25-30% of their party that just literally cannot stand Jews.
You think it's that big?
Yeah,
Wow.
I do. I absolutely do. Who's at all these?
I think the progressives have become like the poison pilled on Jews largely.
But while small, it could still be enough to cost them the election. It's where it goes back to identity politics and being held together by a bunch of small coalitions, single issue voters. Which brings us to the next 30-some-odd seconds.
About margins. It's a slim election. You cannot lose. They could have lost 3-4% of the party. Very easily.
That's right.
Easily. Conservatively, 3-4% of the party.
There's a lot of different strains. We don't need to focus on this too much, but my last tidbit on this is there are many different strains of anti-Semitism, and I think it's important to analyze them and take them for what they are separately. This Louis Farrakhan and Tamika Mallory and Linda Sarsour adjacent anti-Semitism is from a place of viewing...
100. But let me say this really quick, because there's another issue here that could, in fact, sway a lot more voters than you think. And it's not just the situation overseas. It's also this other issue involving Tim Walz. And no, I am not talking about the stolen valor situation, while that right there will definitely come into play, because you see, a state like, say, Virginia, with a lot of veterans, military bases, that right there suddenly becomes in play for Republicans, and Trump has been campaigning there. However, the issue that I'm about to mention is the issue that it is that people are going to say that this little ordeal, this little spat that Kamala Harris had with a protester may get her some additional votes. Not when you actually look at the vice presidential pick that she has and, of course, some of the wacky laws that he has signed. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but this one right here, to me, I think is the one that takes the cake.
Oh, yeah. No, I think the main attack on him really has to get to that bill he signed with the transgender stuff, with the protecting pedophiles.
It wasn't that it was overtly like. We got to be clear on this, okay? It removed a provision from law that excluded child predation as a sexual orientation. Right. So there was a law that said sexual orientation is defined as such, and then it added adults being attracted to children is not covered or protected, blah, blah, blah. And the Minnesota State Legislature and the governor signed this. They struck that from the law.
Yes. Which is
there's no reason to do that.
Unless
none whatsoever.
You're supporting pedophiles.
Right.
Suburban women, especially suburban white women, typically tend to be the most agreeable of the voter base. Now, Kamala Harris is enjoying an advantage with women, and of course she'll carry women. She'll probably get right around 52 to 54% of women, and Trump will probably fall short of about 43. He probably maxes out at 44, but of course he recently acknowledged he's not going to get too many voters of color, which of course I look at that and say, yeah, you're just getting a little bit of black men, but of course you're taking away the tandem that she needs, which is max turnout between black men and black women, and she's not getting that. She's also not getting a max tandem with Gen Z voters as well. That right there will be another video altogether that will probably come out next week. But something you got to understand is this right here. Suburban women typically don't like Trump. However, the thing is this right here. Kamala needs those voters to turn out for her to even give her a shot. Well, when they hear about policies involving transitioning kids and the P words, they start hearing stuff like that, they begin to get turned off by voting for it because suburban women, for the most part, do still care about their children. Now, granted, it splits a little bit more down the line, but still, though, at the same time, it's not polls that win these elections, it's turnout, which, of course, is going to be a great segue into what I've got to tell you guys now, because there is, in fact, a sinister component to what it is that the mainstream media is doing. I don't know if they're doing it on purpose or if they're doing it unwittingly, but I think it's time we have a conversation about it. Normally, when you see polls like this right here showing a massive bounce, you might think to yourself, these right here are suppression polls. It can be, but given the fact that the Trump base, the MAGA base, is much loyal to the Republican nominee, it seems that bit doesn't really work, especially if you call it out. People tend to know what it is, and they show up and vote anyways. Like I said before, turnout is actually what wins elections, not polls. Now, let me say this before we close the video. I was listening to Richard Barris the other day, and he was telling a story about, I'm not going to say any actual names, but let's just say he was telling a story about somebody he knew being, let's just say he had to talk that person down from self-harm. The reason why he had to talk him down from self-harm is because the person he was talking to was a very much an Andrew Gillum fan, very much an Andrew Gillum voter. And, of course, after Andrew Gillum lost in 2018 his gubernatorial race to Ron DeSantis, the guy was threatening self-harm. He basically went into, I can't say the word here on the platform because of YouTube's terms of service. I have no idea why it is they have a certain nix on the word, but we'll just say he was threatening to self-delete. Barris had to talk him out of it because the media led this guy on to believe that their candidate was going to win. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but one of the biggest components of Trump derangement syndrome that occurred after Trump won in 2016 was the media's fault. They led everybody in the country to believe that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election in a massive landslide, and then come to find out she ended up losing the election. I think that they're doing the exact same thing here, because how else do you explain somebody whose favorability was like 28% at one time, and all of a sudden it's now up to over 50 in like a span of like 2 weeks? It seems pretty daggone fake, but yes, there are people out there who do fall for it, and sadly, it seems to me that the mainstream media is whether they know it or not, it seems to me that the implications of the possibility of lying to their own voter base, and I've talked about them blackpilling their own from time to time, it seems to me that the implications of this right here could be pretty daggone dark and dire. But you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. I would love to hear what you guys have got to say. But this right here is one of the main reasons why it is that I don't worry about the polls, because I know that Kamala Harris, if you just let her be Kamala, she will screw things up on her own. But you guys tell me what you think in the comments. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sound off in the comment section. I'll see you guys later.